Hi.
Do you want to join us?
The first shows that I worked was down
One condition. Now, the kids here have been expecting you to do something, so if you don't want to dance, sing.
You, man, you name it, I've been there. You know. Really.
Okay, but then we cut out, right?
I'm gonna do it, and I was anxious to do some live appearances.
Come on, everybody, and snap your fingers now.
Improved. The overall sound's improved, I mean.
Come on, everybody, and clap your hands real loud.
I just do whatever I feel on stage.
Come on, everybody, take a real deep breath and repeat.
Excuse me, I can't take this fresh air.
I love my baby. I love my baby. I love
Well, it'll be the type of stuff that I do.
Hey,
It's a
my
mix.
baby loves me. My baby loves me.
In August of 1977, the world lost Elvis Presley. He was only 42 years old. Yet by then, Elvis Presley was no longer just a man. He was a symbol, an icon, a myth, a figure so famous that millions of people felt as though they knew him, even though most had never met him.
So I like it, boy. Compared to Las Vegas.
For over 2 decades, Elvis had dominated popular culture. His face was everywhere. His voice was everywhere. His influence was everywhere. He changed music, changed fashion, changed celebrity itself.
The first shows that I worked was down here, man. I'm used to.
Long before social media, long before 24-hour news, long before the internet, Elvis Presley became one of the most recognizable human beings on Earth. And that's exactly where the problem began. Because the world didn't just love Elvis. The world needed Elvis. Fans needed him. Record labels needed him. Hollywood needed him. His manager needed him. His entourage needed him. Everyone needed Elvis Presley to keep being Elvis Presley. Forever.
Every little town here, Longview, man, you name it, I've been there. You know. Really, I've been all over Texas.
But human beings aren't built to become myths. They get tired. They get lonely. They struggle. They change. Yet somewhere along the way, the boy from Mississippi disappeared beneath the legend. And once the world turned him into the king, nobody seemed to know how to let him be a man again.
They asked me to do it, and I was anxious to do some live appearances. You know, it'd been a long time since I've been on stage in front of anybody live.
This is not just a story of rock and roll. This is not just a story of fame. This is a story of what happens when a person becomes larger than life, and what it costs to carry a crown you can never take off.
Well, I think the overall thing is improved. The overall sound's improved, I mean.
This is the story of Elvis Presley, the man they turned into a king. Before fame, before Graceland, before the screaming crowds, before the white jumpsuits and world tours, Elvis Presley was just a poor kid growing up in the American South, a boy searching for his place in the world, long before the world knew his name, before he became the king, before he became a cultural revolution, before he became one of the most famous people who ever lived. Elvis Presley was simply a boy from Tupelo, Mississippi, and life wasn't easy.
Well, I just do whatever I feel on stage. As I always did that.
Elvis Aaron Presley was born on January 8, 1935. His family struggled financially for much of his childhood. Money was scarce. Opportunities were limited. The future often felt uncertain. Yet despite the hardships, there was something Elvis never lacked. Love, particularly from his mother, Gladys. Their bond would become one of the most important relationships of his entire life. Friends and family often described them as inseparable.
Excuse me, I can't take this fresh air, man. I'm used to the garbage can at the International Hotel, man.
Gladys believed in Elvis long before anyone else did. Long before the records. Long before the headlines. Long before the world started calling him the king.
If I can't smell some garbage, I don't feel at home, man, I'll tell you.
Elvis spent much of his life searching for the same unconditional acceptance he felt as a child. Growing up in the South during the 1930s and 1940s exposed Elvis to a unique mix of influences.
Well, it'll be the type of stuff that I do. It's a mixture of things, you know. It's a little rock and a little country western.
Gospel music in church, country music on the radio, blues music drifting through neighborhoods and local venues. Different sounds, different cultures, different worlds. And Elvis absorbed all of it. He listened, learned, studied. Even when he didn't realize he was doing so, music became more than entertainment. It became possibility, an escape, a way to imagine a future beyond poverty.
Yeah, it's the same type of thing. A lot of different type of songs. So I just hope I can put on a good show, man.
Yet if you had met Elvis as a teenager, you probably wouldn't have predicted superstardom. He was shy, quiet, awkward, different. Classmates remembered someone who often seemed uncomfortable in his own skin, someone trying to figure out where he belonged. And maybe that's why music mattered so much.
Man, they got stuck in Nashville, and you know, they make so much money, and they do so well in Nashville, you can't get them out of there.
Because when Elvis sang, something changed. Confidence appeared, energy appeared, identity appeared. For the first time, he wasn't searching for who he was. He knew. Then came a moment that would alter history.
I think it's fantastic. You see, country music was always a part of the influence on my type of music humor.
In 1953, a young Elvis walked into Sun Records in Memphis. Officially, he was there to record a song as a gift. Unofficially, he was stepping toward destiny. Nobody inside that building knew it yet. Not Elvis, not the employees, not the music industry. But the shy kid from Tupelo was about to unleash something America had never seen before. And once it arrived, nothing would ever be the same again.
It's a combination of country music and gospel and rhythm and blues all combined is what it really was. As a child, I was influenced by all of that.
In 1954, America heard something it had never heard before. And more importantly, it saw something it had never seen before. Because Elvis Presley wasn't just a singer. He was a disruption, a shockwave, a cultural earthquake. The kind of figure that appears once in a generation and leaves the world permanently changed.
Everybody in the turn your head to the left.
It started at Sun Records, a small Memphis recording studio run by Sam Phillips. Phillips had spent years searching for something different, a sound that could break through the boundaries of the music industry, a sound that could connect worlds that America often kept separate.
Come on, everybody, and turn your head to the right.
Then Elvis walked through the door, young, nervous, unknown, and carrying a voice unlike anything anyone expected. During one recording session, Elvis began fooling around between takes, singing an old blues song with a faster rhythm, playing with the music, having fun.
Love my baby, love my baby, love my baby. Hey, 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 my baby loves me.
Suddenly, the room changed. Musicians joined in. The energy exploded. And for the first time, everyone present felt it. Something new had arrived. Nobody called it rock and roll yet. Not in the way history would remember it. But the spark was there. Raw, electric, impossible to ignore. Elvis took gospel, country, blues, rhythm and blues, and somehow blended them into something entirely his own. The sound felt dangerous, exciting, rebellious, alive. Young people loved it immediately. Their parents often hated it, which only made it more popular. And when Elvis appeared on television, the reaction became even more intense. It wasn't just music, it was a movement. The swagger, the confidence, the way he performed, the way he challenged expectations without saying a word. Teenage audiences screamed. Critics panicked. Religious leaders condemned him. Newspapers debated him. Politicians worried about him. And Elvis Presley became the most talked about young performer in America. Looking back now, it can be difficult to understand just how controversial he seemed. Today, his performances look relatively tame. But in the conservative America of the 1950s, Elvis represented something larger than music. Change, youth, freedom, rebellion. The future arriving faster than many people were comfortable with. The more critics attacked him, the bigger he became. The more adults complained, the louder teenagers screamed. Every appearance generated headlines. Every performance generated debate. Every record shattered expectations. Suddenly, Elvis wasn't simply successful. He was everywhere. Hit records, television appearances, national tours, fan clubs, merchandise, endorsements. The machine was growing, and it was growing around one man. A young man barely in his 20s. A young man still trying to understand who he was. Yet while the public saw confidence, Elvis was experiencing something nobody had ever experienced before. This level of fame didn't really exist. Not like this. There was no blueprint, no instruction manual, no examples to follow. Elvis Presley was becoming the first modern celebrity, and nobody knew what that would do to a human being, including Elvis. Because while America was busy creating the king, the boy from Tupelo was slowly disappearing beneath the crown. And the higher Elvis climbed, the harder it would become to separate the man from the myth. Soon, he wouldn't just be a star. he would become something much larger, a brand, a business, an empire, and for the rest of his life, he would struggle to escape it. By the late 1950s, Elvis Presley had become something far bigger than a musician. He was becoming an industry, a product, a symbol, a phenomenon unlike anything America had ever seen. And with every passing year, the distance between Elvis Presley the man and Elvis Presley the icon grew larger. The records kept selling, the crowds kept growing, the headlines kept coming. Yet behind the success, another figure was becoming increasingly important. Colonel Tom Parker, Elvis's manager, the man who helped transform a talented young singer into a global superstar. And depending on who you ask, either the architect of Elvis's success or the architect of his prison, Parker understood something before almost anyone else. Elvis wasn't simply an artist. He was a brand, a business, a machine capable of generating extraordinary amounts of money. Movies, merchandise, endorsements, television specials, records, tours. Everything Elvis touched seemed to become profitable, and Parker intended to maximize every opportunity. At first, the arrangement worked brilliantly. Elvis became richer, more famous, more powerful, but success often comes with hidden costs. Because the more valuable Elvis became, the less freedom he seemed to have. Decisions increasingly revolved around protecting the brand, protecting the image, protecting the empire, not necessarily protecting Elvis. Then came another major turning point. In 1958, Elvis Presley entered the United States Army. For many careers, such an interruption would have been disastrous. Yet Elvis returned even bigger than before, more mature, more polished, more controlled. But something had changed. The rebellious young rock and roll revolutionary was gradually being reshaped into something safer, something more commercially reliable. Hollywood soon became the next chapter. Film after film followed. Blue Hawaii, Viva Las Vegas, Girl Happy, Fun in Acapulco. Audiences loved them. Studios loved them. Parker loved them. But Elvis increasingly did not. Because while the movies made money, they rarely challenged him. The roles became repetitive, predictable, formulaic. The same stories, the same songs, the same smiling version of Elvis, again and again. And beneath the success, frustration began growing. Elvis had dreamed of becoming a serious actor. He admired performers like Marlon Brando and James Dean. He wanted respect. He wanted artistic growth. He wanted to evolve. Yet instead, he often found himself trapped inside a version of Elvis Presley that everyone else seemed happy with. The king, the movie star, the entertainer, the guaranteed paycheck. And perhaps that's where the real conflict began. Because Elvis Presley had become bigger than Elvis Presley. Millions of people loved him. Yet fewer and fewer people seemed interested in what he wanted. The machine needed Elvis to keep producing, keep performing, keep smiling, keep being the king. And when a person becomes that valuable, people often stop asking whether they're happy. By the late 1960s, Elvis had everything a person could dream of. Wealth, fame, success, adoration. Yet privately, something was missing. Purpose, direction, freedom. The crown looked magnificent from the outside, but inside, it was becoming heavier every year. And soon, Elvis would discover that becoming the king was easy. Living as the king was much harder. Because while the world celebrated the legend, the man beneath it was becoming increasingly isolated. And the loneliest chapter of his life was about to begin. By the 1970s, Elvis Presley was one of the most famous people on earth. He had achieved everything he once dreamed about. Wealth, fame, success, influence. The kind of life millions of people imagined when they thought about happiness. Yet behind the gates of Graceland, a very different story was unfolding. Because fame can buy almost anything. Almost. It can't buy peace. It can't buy purpose. And it certainly can't buy freedom when everyone around you depends on you staying exactly the same. To the public, Graceland looked like a palace, a kingdom fit for the king. But over time, it became something else. A sanctuary, a refuge, a place where Elvis could hide from a world that never stopped demanding more. More appearances, more records, more performances, more Elvis. The irony was heartbreaking. Millions of people adored him. Yet Elvis was becoming increasingly isolated, surrounded by people, but often alone. Friends, employees, bodyguards, entourage members. The group later nicknamed the Memphis Mafia. They traveled with him, worked for him, protected him. Yet many depended on Elvis financially, which created a dangerous dynamic. because the people closest to him often needed him to remain exactly as he was. The king, the provider, the center of the universe. And when everyone depends on you, it becomes difficult to hear the truth, difficult to hear no, difficult to hear concern, difficult to hear honesty. Meanwhile, the pressures continue building. Elvis's marriage to Priscilla Presley was struggling. The demands of fame had taken their toll. Years of touring, years of separation, years of living beneath extraordinary scrutiny. Eventually, the marriage ended. Another painful reminder that success does not protect people from heartbreak. In fact, sometimes it makes heartbreak harder, because there is no private space to heal, no ordinary life waiting outside the spotlight. Then there was a touring, endless touring, city after city, night after night, thousands of people expecting the same magic every time, the same energy, the same charisma, the same Elvis Presley they remembered from years before. But Elvis was changing. He was getting older, more tired, more frustrated, more trapped, yet the machine couldn't slow down. Too many people relied on it. Too much money depended on it. Too much mythology depended on it. And so Elvis kept going, even when his health began deteriorating, even when the warning signs became impossible to ignore. Prescription medications became a growing part of his life, originally prescribed for legitimate medical issues, sleep problems, pain, anxiety, exhaustion. But over time, the medications multiplied, one prescription to wake up, another to sleep, another to perform, another to recover. It wasn't uncommon in the entertainment world of the era, but that didn't make it safe. And for Elvis, it was becoming increasingly dangerous. Looking back now, it's easy to ask why nobody stopped it, why nobody intervened, why nobody forced change. But that's often how celebrity works. When someone becomes a legend, people stop seeing their vulnerability. They see the myth, the image, the icon, the king. And perhaps that's what made Elvis's situation so tragic. The world loved him, but fewer and fewer people seemed able to protect him, because protecting Elvis might have required disappointing Elvis, or confronting him, or slowing down the machine. And nobody seemed willing to do that. By the mid-1970s, the contrast was impossible to ignore. On stage, Elvis could still be brilliant, still command a room, still remind audiences why he changed music forever. But offstage, the cracks were widening. Physically, emotionally, spiritually, the boy from Tupelo had become a king, but the crown was crushing him. And as his health continued declining, the question became increasingly difficult to avoid. Could anyone save Elvis Presley? Or had the myth finally become too powerful for the man beneath it? Because the final chapter of Elvis's story was approaching, and it would force the world to confront something it had spent years ignoring. The king was human after all. On August 16, 1977, Elvis Presley died at Graceland. He was 42 years old. The news spread across America with astonishing speed. Radio stations interrupted programming. Television networks broke into broadcasts. Fans gathered outside Graceland in disbelief. For millions of people, it felt impossible, because Elvis Presley wasn't supposed to die. Not really. He was the king, larger than life, bigger than music, bigger than celebrity, bigger than the ordinary rules that seemed to apply to everyone else. Yet behind the myth was a man whose body had been under enormous strain for years, a man carrying pressures few people could truly understand, a man who had spent much of his adult life living inside a character the world refused to let him escape. And perhaps that's what makes Elvis's story so tragic. Not simply how it ended, but how long the warning signs have been visible. The exhaustion, the isolation, the declining health, the dependence on medication, the growing distance between Elvis the person and Elvis the symbol. Looking back now, many people search for a single explanation, a single mistake, a single moment, a single person to blame. But stories like Elvis's are rarely that simple. Because Elvis Presley didn't become Elvis Presley overnight, and neither did the circumstances that surrounded his death. They were built over years. Years of pressure, years of expectation, years of people needing Elvis to remain exactly who he had always been. The king, the entertainer, the icon, even when the man himself was struggling, even when the cost was becoming obvious. Yet something remarkable happened after Elvis died. The myth became even bigger. Instead of fading, it grew. Graceland became a pilgrimage site. Fans traveled from around the world. New generations discovered his music. His image appeared everywhere. Books, films, merchandise, television specials, conspiracy theories, legends, stories. Decades later, people still debate Elvis Presley, not just a musician, the cultural phenomenon, the impact, the legacy, the meaning, because Elvis didn't simply influence music. He influenced celebrity itself. Before Elvis, there were stars. After Elvis, there were icons. Modern celebrity culture owes a tremendous debt to the path he unknowingly created. The adoration, the obsession, the merchandising, the loss of privacy, the impossible expectations. Much of it began with him. And perhaps that's why his story still feels so relevant today. Because Elvis Presley wasn't the last person consumed by fame. He was simply one of the first. The blueprint, the warning, the example. Which brings us back to the question at the heart of this story. Did Elvis Presley die because of fame? Or because nobody would let him stop being Elvis? Maybe the answer is both. Maybe the tragedy wasn't that Elvis became the king. Maybe the tragedy was that once he became the king, nobody knew how to let him be anything else. Not his fans, not the media, not the industry, not even Elvis himself. And that may be the saddest truth of all. Because somewhere beneath the white jumpsuits, beneath the screaming crowds, beneath the records and the headlines, beneath the crown, was still the same boy from Tupelo, the boy who loved music, the boy who loved his mother, the boy searching for connection, the boy searching for belonging, the boy who never imagined the world would turn him into a king. Elvis Presley changed music forever. He changed culture forever. He changed celebrity forever. But perhaps his greatest legacy isn't what he achieved. It's what his story teaches us. That fame can give a person everything, except the freedom to be themselves. This was Elvis Presley, the man they turned into a king. History remembers the crown, the music, the records, the legend. But legends are easy to love. People are harder. Elvis Presley became one of the most famous human beings who ever lived. Yet his story was never really about fame. It was about identity, about belonging, about what happens when the world falls in love with a version of you that becomes impossible to escape. For millions of fans, Elvis will always be the king, and perhaps he deserves that title. But before he was a king, he was a son, a dreamer, a musician, a man. And maybe the most important thing we can remember about Elvis Presley is not the myth, but the human being who carried it. Because crowns look magnificent from a distance, but they can be very heavy to wear. This was Elvis Presley, the man behind the crown,